guys, welcome back to another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin. I'm so excited because today we're actually talking about two of my favorite things, which is vets and pets. I am a military brat. My dad was in the Marine Corps and he retired. And as you can see in my intro, that I have dogs. So I'm so excited that we're going to be talking about a great organization that gives back, and that's Paws of War. So Robert, welcome to the show.
Melissa, thank you for having me.
Okay, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am, a staunch supporter, of course, our service members and our first responders. And Paws of War's mission is to help our veterans and our first responders, both active and retired or disabled.
So how did the Paws of War come about?
Years ago, we started bringing dogs back from overseas for service members who were on deployment. They rescued an animal, could be a cat or a dog, and while serving in a variety of countries, they fell in love with that animal, they nurtured that animal, they lived with that animal, and now they have to come back to America. And right away they start to scramble, now what do I do? They're not allowed to bring the dog back with them or the cat. They're not allowed to play a role in bringing the animal back. So they have to count on people like us, right? An organization that does that. And we learned that it was affecting those who could not bring their dog back, people who we were talking to who had to leave an animal behind, what it was like for them, the PTSD they got from it, the overwhelming of guilt and regret that they left that animal behind. In most cases in these countries, animals are treated very unkindly, and they know that the fate of those animals would not be a good one. So whenever we do get a call now, a request, we jump into gear. When we first started, we were learning the best routes to get these animals to safety. Some of these areas were really hot war zones, so they were way more complicated scenarios. But fast forward, it evolved into two things. One, placing service dogs with now disabled veterans, and still continuing to help those veterans, those active military members, to bring those animals to America, and they become companions for them and their family.
Well, there's one particular campaign that you're working on right now, and that's Save Nubs and Her Kittens, correct?
That's right. So Nubs is a mom cat that had a litter. If it were not for these soldiers, brave soldiers, she'd probably be unfortunately killed, or her kittens would have been killed as well. They rescued her, they nurtured her, they've given her a ton of love. These cats and dogs over there, they don't know what it's like to get a kind touch or to have somebody actually give them some food. They normally are looked at like vermin and are not very respected. So to have to leave Nubs behind would be traumatic for anybody, but more important for those who fell in love with her, the whole unit. So we are on a mission now to get her and her kittens to America.
So when a soldier contacts you about trying to get their animals from overseas back to the States, what process do you guys have to go through? Well,
there's a variety of layers. The first thing is to securely get the animal from the location that they are in. They're not allowed to leave the location and just bring the animal somewhere. So we have to get a civilian, oftentimes maybe retired from the military, but a civilian at that point, to go and collect that animal safely, or animals. And then we have to immediately get that animal to a veterinarian. Sometimes it could be 400 or 500 miles away, depending on the location. And we start the medical process. And then we start a quarantine process. And then we have to start a route process. Then we start a foster process, because the ideal scenario doesn't always work. So right now with COVID, animals are staying way longer than they have to. Flights are canceled on a daily basis. Heat restrictions. So we have medical fosters, we have transporters, we have flights that we have to arrange. Very different from when someone's flying their own pet versus a pet that's being flown in cargo. multiple. So there's a lot of layers, and then there's all the paperwork process. So to get an animal imported into the country, there's a lot of process there through customs, through CDC. So there's quite a few steps people don't realize.
So I'd imagine it costs a lot of money too. So how do you guys survive? How do you manage to get all this besides donations?
Well, that's always the hard part. On top of the hard parts, we count on small donors from a variety of people, just helping us, believing in the mission, believing in the animal, believing in our military, and just small donors to say, hey, listen, we believe in this. We want to get this animal back. And that's how we're always looking for a corporate sponsor that says, hey, we're willing to sponsor one animal, because right now we have a lot of requests. But, it's people like yourself who's spreading the word, getting the message out there, and hopefully someone will step up and say, hey, I want to help. My company will get behind, bringing back an animal for our military. That's what we're looking for. But generally, it's just small donations.
So how do the soldiers request? What process do they go through?
The process is kind of simple. Obviously, they have to be an active member, and they fill out some simple information. We learn a little bit about where that animal's going in the country, and we stay in touch with them. And we give them updates, and then we start the process. Once we start the process, we keep the soldiers in the loop. We tend to start communicating with their family here stateside. It could be several months before they come back. Sometimes we will hold the animal if there's no one that they have that can hold the animal. And then we'll reunite them at some point, or we'll get the animal to the family. And that dog will stay with the family and until that soldier returns. And then the soldier and that animal will be reunited.
Is there some kind of criteria that you guys use? Because I know you obviously can't do all requests, because that's kind of, or do you try to do all requests?
So we have never turned anyone down. So we take on every there is no criteria. If you're an active military member and you're serving overseas and you have an animal that you want to bring back here, we do not turn you down.
Wow, that's amazing, because you think about it, animals are like so much for the stress, and you talked about already PTSD with the vets and stuff like that. So what happens to these animals? Let's say if a unit adopts it, does someone in the unit take it, or do they?
Yeah, always. So somebody is always attached to the animal. In fact, if you see behind me, there's a cat sitting on that chair. That's Tweeks, and Tweeks is the actual abnormal scenario. Tweeks was rescued by an ER doctor who was also a soldier overseas, and he was continuing to travel from location to location. Tweeks was in pretty bad shape, but he said, I want Tweeks not to live a life like this, and if you can get him to America and get him a good home, that would be my wish. And we got him here, her, and she's up for adoption. But most of the time, the soldier is one of the soldiers in that unit will be adopting that animal and staying in their family.
I love that. And thought that was a cat back there, but I wasn't sure. I was like making sure. So do you think somebody in your organization is going to end up adopting her?
Not in our organization, but she's up for adoption. But we have a lot of animals coming in the doors, so we can't just take every one. But Tweeks is up for adoption locally here in New York, and she'll make a great companion for somebody.
Yeah, it looks like it, because she's just super sweet in the background, just enjoying being on TV as well.
Our office cat, and who knows, maybe she'll stay here forever. But we'd rather have her in a home where people are there all the time, where we're here, only during the day.
So how did you get involved with this?
I've been an animal lover my whole life, and when I knew that there was animals that were in danger overseas, and they needed to come back, my first instinct was, well, we can't let them stay there. We had to figure it out. So animals are a big part of my life. The welfare of the animals are a big part of my life. And I think we can all agree that, our service members are a special part of our life. So putting them together, which, is created an organization that services both ends, hence helping both ends of the leash is our tagline. So, but you have to have that passion for the animals. Otherwise, in my opinion, it doesn't work.
So let's talk about some of the success stories of animals that you've brought back. Do you have some examples?
We do. We have quite a few. We have one that has significantly changed somebody's life who came back 3 years ago. That dog is Ruba, and Ruba was rescued in Syria. And I get texts probably twice a week from the soldier that he doesn't know what he would have done had he had to leave Ruba behind. He has an album of videos and photos. Ruba has now actually become, he is separated, meaning he's disabled and is separated from the service, and Ruba is now making his way towards a service animal for the same person. We have a soldier who we brought 2 cats back for, and when she came back, she bought herself an RV, and she's traveling around the country with the 2 cats that we brought back for her. And her 2 cats are a big hit wherever they go. We get emails and photos from her on a regular, how her life is just so much better with these 2 animals with her. The stories go on and on. Lots of success stories. Nobody wants to have to fall in love with an animal and then leave it behind. It's a very different scenario in some of these war-torn areas. Animals have a real struggle there. So it's important that we do what we can do when we hear about it.
Yeah, since a lot of these war-torn countries, that animals are sometimes used for food, correct?
That is correct. So the 3 main factors, 1, food, 2, beliefs that a dog is dirty and they cannot be near it. And 3, it's 2, but 3, just the culture of there's no such thing as pets in many of these areas. You don't have a dog in your house ever. And they're just looked at like something that shouldn't belong in this world. So they tend to try to hurt them and just keep them away from them. And it's hard. A lot of street dogs. It's there's no spay and neuter programs, so they just keep multiplying and they suffer. So when a soldier is able to save, protect, nurture, love that animal, there's nothing worse than having to leave it behind for both that soldier and that animal.
Yeah, I can just imagine, because I know I'm based in a military town, and I know there's a lot of military Air Force people that they're forced to leave their animals here with family or something when they're going overseas, because that quarantine kind of hits them up, or it's so expensive to import. So I can just imagine what the cost that you guys have trying to bring them into the country.
Yes, it's very costly, and we there's no way around the costs. This time we have to pay interpreters. We have to pay transporters. Some of these locations, they're really remote. They're in the mountains, and you have to deal, with locals. It gets complicated.
So, what's the normal cost for one of these?
Anywhere from the very, very, very basic $4,000 to $7,000 on an average. That's not including any serious medical needs.
Wow, that's quite a bit of money, and you're just doing it all on donations and the fact that you guys just love animals. Wow.
Yeah, so, it is costly.
Yeah. So let's talk about the benefits for the soldiers now. We talked about the benefits for the animals and the benefits for the soldiers.
Well, I think that anyone who owned a pet can relate to what these animals provide us, but more so for our soldiers who, they see a lot. They go through a lot. It's not, it's not every day that someone becomes a military member. It's a small percentage of our population, and they see things that no one should ever see. They have to do things that no one ever wants to do, and it continues. It's not just once, it's twice, it's every day while they're serving. So this is an important thing for them to have that comfort, whether it's a cat or a dog, in their life. Especially, you don't want them to be taken from that animal be taken from them, and then have to regret leaving that animal behind. But when they are here, when they're there, when they're serving, it makes things a lot easier for them. You hear the stories, and you talk to their family, and they call home, or they whole conversation with the cat. So it really gives them that home sense feeling. And when they do come home, they have that dog with them. That dog is actually waiting for them, and it's surreal to them. Half of them don't even believe it. It's really happening. Like, is that dog really at my house? Is he really going to be there when I get there? They just can't fathom it.
Now, you talked about having that one of the examples that you mentioned about turning the dog into a service dog. Do you guys do that as well, or do you have something you source out?
So we as a part of our program here, our main mission is to place service dogs with disabled veterans suffering from PTSD and TBI, traumatic brain injury. So that's our main mission. Although the mission evolved out of bringing dogs back from the very, very beginning from overseas, but the mission was not to place them as service animals. There's a select few that will separate. They will have a disability, something very traumatic, and then it's up to them if they want to start training that animal as a service animal. But we do that, yes.
So let's talk about the process of turning an animal into a service animal. What kind of timeline, process, everything goes with that?
Well, it's not the same for every animal. If we're placing the dog ourselves, things are different. If someone brings a dog to us, or he has a dog, the process generally changes, because that dog may have quite a few things that we have to work out of that dog. Example, that dog could potentially be aggressive. So that's something we have to truly work out in order for that dog to achieve that status. And some dogs just won't make it. So it's challenging. It's definitely challenging it's challenging when you find a great dog and you place it. Never mind a dog that has some issues. But we have some great trainers. We have dedicated people, and your passion makes it work. And on that end too, we've been very successful.
So you guys are located in New York, but you basically serve the whole United States, correct?
So we are based out of New York. We have a small chapter in Florida, and we provide services throughout the country. I mean, we're a small organization, but we do provide services throughout the country on a limited basis.
And what do you mean by limited basis?
So if someone applies for a service dog in a certain state, we may not be able to provide them with services right now, especially with COVID. But if somebody applied for certain services, a military member being deployed overseas and he has no place to put his dog because an adoption fell through, we will help. If a service member has an emergency with an animal and they can't pay for the medical care, we will help them. We have a mobile unit, a fully operational mobile medical unit that provides services for animals. That truck is starting to go around the country where the greatest needs are. So those are the kind of services we provide around the country. Somebody is homeless, a veteran homeless, and those shelters will take that veteran in because of the dog. We get involved and we provide a variety of different things to help get that service member, that veteran, into the proper housing. So those are the kind of things we do on a national level.
I love that. You just talked about, military person being deployed and they can't take their dog. That I have a story. We just adopted in October a dog named Gigi, who actually was a military member's dog, and he had nowhere else to go. And my daughter took her, and then my daughter just was like, she was in college, and she's like, it's too much. And she ends up coming to us, and she's probably one of the sweetest dogs ever that we've ever had, and she's a pit bull, so you wouldn't think that.
Right.
But it's so sweet that you talk about helping the military guys, or men and women, not just guys, to find homes for their dogs when they have to go, because that's heartbreaking if they have to know they have to put their dog in a shelter.
It is heartbreaking, and sometimes you wait to the last minute to try to find a home because you don't want to separate with your pet, and you realize how hard it is, and especially if it's a certain breed, right? So it gets harder with certain breeds. So we step in and we help. There's nothing worse than having to go protect this country and worrying about what happened to your dog.
So true. Now let's get back to Nubs. How can people help with Nubs right now?
So if somebody would like to help continue our mission with Nubs and other animals overseas, they go right to our website, which is pawsofwar.org. Or go to our Facebook page, Paws of War, but pawsofwar.org, and they can donate. That's what we need right now. It's a very expensive program. I wish it was cheaper to get these dogs back over. Unless someone can figure out a cheaper way, I'm all ears, but there isn't any.
And why particularly were you involved with Nubs? Let's talk about Nubs' story.
So Nubs is, stationed at a camp, and the Nubs just grabbed the attention of a couple of soldiers. She was clearly desperate. She was a mom. She gave birth, and this is an area where a lot of people are very unkind to animals. So if they didn't step in, a nursing mother that just gave birth would have been subject to abuse, and I'm sure worse. So it started out as a bad story. It's turning into a good story because our mission now is to get Nubs and her babies to here in America.
And the soldier that's helping, that kind of pushed, is she going to be getting all the kittens as well?
So she's getting mama, and I know the unit is figuring out who's going where and what have you, and we're going to let them make that decision. And as we get closer to our mission, completing our mission, they'll have answers for us. So
how far along are you on in this mission?
We're probably we call it's yellow. So we're in a good place. We just gotta continue making sure everything is done. We have young kittens, so that's always more challenging. Can't separate them from mom. They can't travel just yet, so fostering is going to be a longer endeavor. Health certificates, processes. So we're a little ways out, but we're looking good so far.
And do you update on your website when you bring up the campaigns?
We send out an email and we do updates and we're probably going to do an update next week.
Wow, I love that. So how did the soldiers know to get in touch with you?
So I think that we have a reputation for doing this for a few years. We don't advertise, we don't market, so it's just word of mouth.
Wow. And so one soldier just tells another soldier and tells another soldier?
I think they just start scrambling around, unfortunately out of desperation, to figure out how do they get this animal home. and they start calling around, and the family starts calling around, and then we get the phone call.
So you have the family working on the state side, and then the soldiers
That's right.
deployed as well?
It's working on the state side as well. Pretty much does a lot of the heavy lifting as far as finding us, and then we get a call usually from the family, and then we start communicating with the soldiers, and so there's layers of process there as well. But yeah, so we don't advertise, we don't market this, so it's word of mouth.
So when a soldier comes to you, is there a process they have to go through as well?
There's an interview process just to understand a lot of logistics,
Okay.
but there's no approval process outside of just as long as everything qualifies, which, you know, most of it does.
When you say qualify, what exactly does that mean?
Well, so it could be it could be anything that, like example, a dog that we were asked to help with, but no one can get close to the dog. So they were feeding the dog for 4 months. The dog was feral. So it's still something we're going to be doing, but it takes a very different scenario, right? So we have to trap the dog, and then we have to spend probably 5 or 6 months in that country with the right foster to get that dog to start trusting people. The dog's ears were cut off, very visible, and you can see the dog was abused. So he or she does not have any trust for humans anymore. So we can change that. So that's a process that we have to approve, and we do. And then we have to figure out, okay, who's taking the dog, and so those are the kind of things that are a little more in terms of the approval process.
So basically, they're all approved, but there's still more. You have to get into each situation and see what it entails and find out all the details.
That is correct.
You guys are doing great work. Is there anything that you want to share with people before we hop off?
Well, one, thank you, and everyone should, I hope that anyone that's interested in helping to learn about what happens to these animals overseas. But more important, we have to support our military. It is so important. This is Appreciation Month for those who have sacrificed and still continue to sacrifice, and we owe it to them, and there's no question we owe it to the animals. So get involved, reach out to us. Even if you can't afford to make a donation, just call us. Maybe you can volunteer, whatever, but we encourage you to reach out to us.
Well, Robert, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing about Paws of War. I mean, this is a great organization. And I honestly, that's when I got the press release was the first time that I heard about it. But I was like, I have to get on this because I had heard all these times about soldiers wanting to bring their animals back, but didn't know there was an organization that helped. So immediately when I got it, I'm like, I'm going to book you guys.
That's great. That's great. I'm very happy you had me on, Melissa.
All right, guys. If you even think about it, if you want to donate, please donate. If you want to just get involved, get in contact with Robert at pawsofwar.org. And soldiers and animals both need our love. So hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Be blessed, and see you on the next episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin.
Bye-bye.